last environmental ethics seminar of this semester, and I think this is going to be a great one. Looking forward to this. I'm going to jump right in because since I know all of you and we've met before, Joanna, and introduce our guest speaker. This is Kim Bednarek. She's the executive director of the Okefenokee Swamp Park, which you're going to hear quite a bit about this evening. But just in brief introduction, Okefenokee Swamp Park is a nonprofit. It's a key partner with the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge and the state of Georgia in the stewardship and conservation of that important natural resource. Interestingly, prior to joining Okefenokee Swamp Park, Kim was the head of school for the Discovery School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Is that where you're from, Florida?
I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I got lost a while ago.
And she's got a Bachelor of Arts in English, a minor in marine biology, and a Master's of Business Administration. And in addition to a full-time job, Kim's on the board, is the board chair of the St. Mary's Riverkeeper, on the board of directors for the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and she's a current member of the Institute for Georgia Environmental Leadership, which is an incredible year-long leadership program for environmental professionals, which I participated in 2016. And once you participate in that program, you are an IGEL alum for life. It's a pretty cool thing to be a part of. And actually, we met for the first time this summer at an IGEL event down in Macon, Georgia. All right. And what we're going to be hearing about tonight is, among probably, I'm sure, lots of things Okefenokee related, but I think most importantly or most current right now is the current bid to become a World Heritage Site through UNESCO, which is super cool. So,
thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Alfie, thanks so much for inviting me to join you and to meet your class. So I'm going to be talking about activating the natural resources economy in the Okefenokee, and I am used to pitching to investors. All I do is ask for money, and they like to interrupt all the time. So don't be shy about asking questions. If it's more of a conversation, that works better for me, okay? So there I am. I am a recent transplant in Georgia. I joined the Okefenokee Swamp Park in 2020 as their first ever executive director. It is a nearly 80-year-old nonprofit in Southeast Georgia. Now let's start with who's been to the Okefenokee Swamp? Oh, friends. Who's from Georgia? All right. And the rest of you from the United States? All right. Okay. So you Georgians have absolutely no excuse. You must come visit the Okefenokee. So I came in 2020 to Georgia. I was down in Jacksonville, Northeast Florida. I ran an independent Montessori International Baccalaureate school for nearly 20 years before I took this job, based on my interest in conservation and in education. So we are a primary partner to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, as Alfie said. I'm going to be going over what the refuge is and what's going on down in Southeast Georgia, which is pretty interesting. It's complicated, and there's lots of opportunities, but there's a lot of crises happening. So, and I believe, I know you guys have heard this before, right? If you have a crisis, what else do you have? Yeah, absolutely, an opportunity. You're going to have to work with me tonight, okay? So I just was in the car for about 6 or 7 hours to get here, so you're going to have to chat with me. So our vision is really to provide education and visitation that inspires conservation of the Okefenokee. We want folks to become immersed in the Okefenokee Swamp. We want people to visit. We want people to engage. And we want people to fall in love with the Okefenokee. So when we do interpretation, it's not just a tour. Anyone here ever been like a tour guide or a naturalist, like in a summer job or something? And so what do you do when you bring someone out? What do you want them to do? You want them to really like the place, right? Were you a tour guide? When you were young. Okay. So what we train our folks to do of all ages is when they do interpretation, you bring people out because you want them to fall in love with the place, right? Because if people don't fall in love with places, they don't want to protect them, right? Whether they're cultural places or natural places. So our primary partner is the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. There's nearly 500 refuges in the United States. We have the Department of Interior, the agency, which is a federal agency, has two parts. It has the National Park side, and then it has the Fish and Wildlife Service side. National Wildlife Refuges fall under Fish and Wildlife Service. So National Wildlife Refuges exist for wildlife, but there's also opportunities for visitation, just like you would have in national parks. Do you think that most people know about how about you? Do you know about National Wildlife Refuges, what they are, where they are? Who's been to one? A couple of you have been to one? All right. This is our big challenge. Our opportunity is to get people to really understand National Wildlife Refuges and why they're important. So this is the statement for the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge of what we call its outstanding universal value. We're going to be talking about that in the context of the Okefenokee being considered as a World Heritage Site. But the Okefenokee is a phenomenal ecological destination that has full integrity. There's very few of these landscapes left on the planet with the kind of integrity that the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge has, which is why it's being considered as a World Heritage Site. This is where it is, right? So where are we? We're somewhere over here, maybe up here?
The smallest county.
Yeah.
There.
Like this, like up here, like little up here? Yeah. Okay, all right. So I was here this morning and I drove up here and get an idea where we are. We're right on that line, right? So the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge is the headwaters of the Suwannee River and the St. Mary's River. It's 438,000 acres, the swamp itself. 407,000 of those acres are the National Wildlife Refuge. So it's a federal National Wildlife Refuge. So it's protected by Fish and Wildlife Service. There's about 13 employees that monitor this entire National Wildlife Refuge. It also is right there on the Florida-Georgia line. So it is in Georgia, but we're awfully close to Florida. So lots of Floridians really love the Okefenokee the same way that Georgians love the Okefenokee. So if you were to go visit it, you'd have to get in your car and drive about 5 or 6 hours, but it's well worth the trip. We're closer to Jacksonville. Jacksonville's right down here than we are to Atlanta. So we do get a lot of folks from Northeast Florida that come up and visit. So this is the North American coastal plain here. And one of the things we'll talk about when we get further along in the presentation about why the Okefenokee is being considered as a World Heritage Site is because of its biodiversity. It is one of the most biodiverse places in this coastal plain. Is this kind of stuff y'all talk about in your classes? Okay. This is the National Wildlife Refuge. About 120 miles of water trails. So for those who have been, let's pick on Alfie. He's your instructor, right? Okay, so what did you do when you went to the Okefenokee?
Rented a canoe and paddled through the swamp rivers.
Yeah. Okay.
Looked at alligators.
There you go. Alligators and lots of wading birds. For mammals, we have more black bears than any other place in the state of Georgia. We have an active population of nearly 500 black bears, and we have about 10 to 15,000 American alligators. So if you were to come visit the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, there are 120 miles of water trails, and there are 10 camping platforms. So I talked about the swamp being 438,000 acres, and then 407,000 acres are protected by the National Wildlife Refuge. Then inside of that, about 350,000 acres are congressionally designated wilderness, right? So right inside that wilderness is where those camping platforms are. It's the highest level of protection that we have in the United States. And so to go out there and experience a camping platform, you get a permit through the National Wildlife Refuge, and you get a platform all to yourself. You can travel east to west, check out prairies, go down canals, experience the darkest skies that you're going to see anywhere on the East Coast. So it's an international dark sky park here in Stephen C. Foster State Park on the west side. So who here has been to a dark sky park?
Dark Sky Park.
Dark sky park. Yep.
Oh, I don't.
Where'd you go?
I went to Great Sand Dunes.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so dark sky sightseeing, astrotourism is actually becoming much more popular. You know, we're losing our wild spaces and places. We think about that in terms of terrestrial life, but we're losing our ability to see the dark sky with our naked eye and to see the stars and to experience the darkness. It's actually, for our wildlife, it's one of the reasons that fireflies are going away, is because of light pollution. So dark skies are really important, and astrotourism is a major driver of tourism to wild places and to isolated destinations. So the Okefenokee here in Southeast Georgia has one of those dark sky parks. So some of you learned something new, right? Okay. So the Okefenokee has been all over the news. Can anyone tell me why the Okefenokee's been in the news for the last 5 years? Titanium dioxide mining. Yes, exactly. Any other reasons? All right.
The last 5 years, but I know that there were big wildfires.
Wildfires.
A few years ago.
Great. Yep. Some of the largest wildfires in the United States happen in the Okefenokee. You hear about the wildfires out west, but the wildfires here in the Okefenokee are the biggest ones we have in this country. So the Okefenokee it's basically Trail Ridge, which let me see if I go back one. Right along here is what's known as Trail Ridge. It's an earthen dam. It's an old Pleistocene sand ridge. And that dam actually keeps the Okefenokee intact. The Okefenokee is a perched wetland. And in that sand, just like you see on the beach, are heavy minerals like that black speckly stuff you see if you go to the beach. That is heavy minerals, titanium dioxide. So this sand ridge here, known as Trail Ridge, has very dense deposits of titanium dioxide that are not strategically important for the United States, but they are very valuable in the marketplace. Does anyone know what titanium dioxide is used for predominantly in the marketplace? Correct. It's a whitener. Yep, for paints. So it whitens paints and toothpaste and bunches of other stuff. So it's not strategic, but it is valuable. So if you own property right here on the outskirts of the Okefenokee swamp, you might want to mine it, because by mining it, you're going to make a lot of money. And right now, the timber market's a bit depressed, and it has been for a while. So the Okefenokee has been in the news for mining. Along with that, people started to pay attention to the Okefenokee because it is an incredible destination to visit. The mining threat has been ongoing for more than 30 years, maybe longer than that. DuPont tried to mine the Okefenokee back in the late 90s. Then Secretary of Interior Bruce Babbitt came down to Georgia, came to the Okefenokee and said, "You shall not mine the Okefenokee swamp." Titanium dioxide is a very common mineral, and this is a very uncommon swamp. So they stopped the mine, and DuPont gave the land over for conservation. But the politics of today are not the politics of the 90s. And so right now, the state of Georgia is about to drop a permit that will allow a company called Twin Pines out of Alabama to mine titanium dioxide in the southeast corner of the Okefenokee swamp, in between the St. Mary's River and the swamp. So that has created a lot of attention for the Okefenokee region. And it's also a place that's not very prosperous. Right? Southeast and Southwest Georgia struggle. People struggle to make a good living. So quality of life in Southeast Georgia is not what many people would like it to be. Whoops. There we go. So, we have all this attention on the Okefenokee. People want to mine it. The state of Georgia is about to drop a permit. It used to be that waters of the United States were protected by the Environmental Protection Administration. 30% of jurisdictional wetlands were under their protection. But under the last Trump administration, they redefined waters of the United States so that 30% of jurisdictional wetlands go to the state for permitting, not to the feds for permitting. So the feds no longer had access to permit. So that's why it's a state decision, which has been very, very political. Folks are coming up with all kinds of ideas of ways they can protect the swamp, how they can inspire visitation to the swamp, how we can activate our natural resources economy in the swamp. The Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge has been on the list to become a World Heritage Site for more than 40 years. We just were actually greenlit within a couple of years, back in 2022, and we are very close to moving that forward into a nomination. So Senator Ossoff, you know, U.S. Senator John Ossoff. So he was elected, help me out here, in 2021? Because 2026 is when he's up again, right? Is that right, or 2020? 2020. Yeah. So I came to the swamp. He was elected in 2020. I came to the swamp in 2020. All this stuff is going on. I didn't know that half this stuff was going on. I came there because I was supposed to be taking a nonprofit and making it a little bit more profitable than it is, and also bringing in investments into the region and investments into the park to revitalize their infrastructure. So I take John Ossoff out on a boat ride in the Okefenokee. He comes to visit because he loves the Okefenokee, because as a child of Georgia, everyone in Georgia visits the Okefenokee when they're a kid, right? You go on a field trip. So he had gone on a field trip and he hadn't been back for a long time. So I had a chance to take the senator out on a boat trip. At the same time, we had the regional director of Fish and Wildlife, Leo Miranda, on our boat. And the senator said to Leo, why isn't the Okefenokee moving forward to become a World Heritage Site? Because people would really know how special it is. And Leo said, well, Fish and Wildlife Service doesn't do that because there are no World Heritage Sites in the U.S. under the purview of Fish and Wildlife Service. He said, we don't know how to do that. We don't have the people to do that. We don't have the resources to do that. And I said, well, I'll cover the resources. We'll raise money for you. We'll run your project. And the senator looked at Leo Miranda and said, what do you think now? And he said, well, let's do it. So after 40 years on the tentative list, it moved forward, it was greenlit, and the nonprofit that I work for became a partner with Fish and Wildlife Service to run the project. What that has done has been catalytic for the region to get people excited about the potential for the Okefenokee and to understand why it's so special, why it should be protected, and why Trail Ridge should also be protected, because Trail Ridge is the earthen barrier that keeps the Okefenokee Swamp. Without it, you don't have a swamp. So a lot of what I've run into since I started this journey, because I'd never actually stewarded a World Heritage project, so I've had to learn a lot. I work with experts from all over the world, some wonderful people here in the state of Georgia, and folks from all over the place that have come together, work very closely with Secretary Holland, Assistant Secretary Shannon Estenez, who did a lot of work down the Everglades, so she really understands why the Okefenokee is so valuable, with Senator Ossoff, with Senator Warnock, with Congressman Carter, and with our local representatives. So it's a bipartisan effort to really move the Okefenokee forward. I learned about World Heritage, and I learned about how important it is for us to have around the world places that we know humankind looks at and says, these are unique. They have outstanding universal value for their cultural or their natural integrity. These are some of the natural sites that we have in the U.S. Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, right? Sort of iconic iconic destinations for our country and natural destinations. People come from all over the world, and many of you have probably visited some of these places. Well, all of these places are under the purview of the National Park Service. Not one is under the purview of Fish and Wildlife Service. None of them are national wildlife refuges. So your Okefenokee is about to be on this list as the first ever refuge to be added to the World Heritage List, and the first one of its kind globally, this first peatland of its kind globally to be inscribed. So it's pretty interesting. And these are kind of all the things that have happened during the inscription process. And you have to meet certain criteria. So there's 2 criteria that are really important. It's outstanding examples of ecological and biological processes, and then biodiversity. So those are the 2 reasons why the Okefenokee is to be inscribed. The dossier itself is nearing completion. It's about 300 pages. We're doing the final drafts of it right now, the final review. It's about to go in front of the interagency panel for the feds that includes the State Department before it goes over to the World Heritage Convention in Paris for consideration. We've had to raise about $570,000 in less than 2 years, and then curate this dossier, put together the photography and their cartography to have it completed to get it out the door. It's the fastest nomination that's ever been done for the United States. So this is happening in Georgia, which is pretty cool, right? And it looks like we will have this submitted before the administration transitions. And the reason why isn't because the new administration isn't going to support it. It's because the Biden administration wants to take credit for it, right? It's a really big deal. And we also believe that once people learn about it and learn about what makes the Okefenokee so special, they're going to want to visit it. And they're going to want to care about it. And they're going to want to come and understand this whole region of Georgia. So there's currently 26 World Heritage Sites in the United States. This would be the 27th. We will expect a global team visiting Southeast Georgia, which I have to tell you, that makes me laugh a little bit, right? So we got to get the right welcoming party together so they can come in and feel welcome and really get to know the place in April. And then they'll make a final decision. The meeting of the World Heritage Convention to make the decision for the Okefenokee will be in South Korea in the summer of 2026. So preparation, it's really all about visibility. University of Georgia has not been directly involved. We do work with the UGA with our American Alligator Research. We haven't had a lot of engagement from universities in the Southeast Georgia area, but we do expect when this happens, there might be some more interest. And we're hoping that there's more interest, right?
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't been already.
Yeah. So a lot of what I get when we talk about this, and remember, I talk to investors, raising $570,000 in Southeast Georgia for a swamp really wasn't that easy, right? So I had to talk to a lot of people, and they were like, well, why would we do this? Why would we give you money for this? Why does it matter? And it matters for what I've already talked to you about, but why it also matters, and this is meaningful to a lot of influential Georgians, is because Southeast Georgia is not like Athens or Atlanta. Southeast and Southwest Georgia don't have all the opportunities that exist here. There's issues with rural broadband. There's a lack of good choices for education. There's a profound lack of health care. There's not good workforce development. There's not a lot of jobs. The poverty rate in the region hovers at about 40%. So this isn't a part of Georgia, and a lot of, there's 2 Georgias, right? Right, there's that Atlanta to Savannah corridor of Georgia, which now I would say kind of includes Macon with the Okmulgee Mountains National Park, which is about to happen. And then there's the southern part of Georgia, which doesn't have the same opportunities as that we see in the top part of Georgia. So what this does is this activates that natural resources economy where people say, well, wait a minute, I might want to visit there. Wait a minute, we might want to invest there. Maybe we want a biological research station there. There's more tourism opportunities there. There's more entrepreneurial opportunities for people who live in the community to open restaurants and shops and tourism outfitters, right? So then suddenly we go, okay, we get a lot of people going, this seems like an interesting opportunity for this part of the state. So I think you can see on here that basically visitors to the Okefenokee is about 91 million right now is what's spent on visitation. Now, who here is economics people here? Okay, so do you understand direct and indirect outputs for economics?
Yes, I assume, yes.
So when we say that there's $90 million coming into the Okefenokee as a result of tourism, what are we talking about?
Coming in?
Yep.
Well, I guess in this context, it would be like the actual tourists are coming and they're bringing the money, which means the people there could then get the money and then they can invest in their own infrastructure. So the internet might not be as much of a problem, but healthcare, and then in education, and then the 90 million will eventually start compounding into more as the population itself can sustain its own development, and as the swamp will grow, like in popularity, we'll see that coming in more. So it's 90 million is just, they're getting 90 million investment.
Yes.
And what they do with it is more than whatever's happening now. And then it will create more as they start being productive.
So thank you for answering the question. I appreciate you putting your hand up. It's not just somebody coming in and buying a ticket, right? It's what happens to the dollar that goes for the ticket and how it works its way through the community, right? So it's those direct and indirect impacts. It's like a force multiplier for a community, right? So that tourists come in and start spending dollars, it creates a stronger tax base, right? So they can do more with their infrastructure, which is like rural broadband, hospitals. Also, when you have more people coming through, if you have a hotel chain, you might be like, oh, wait a minute, I see tourists there. I think there's an opportunity. Maybe there's not a hotel in Charlton County, right? So there isn't even someplace to stay if you were to come to visit, right? So there's lots of impacts. We work closely with the Conservation Fund, and the Conservation Fund, anyone here know the Conservation Fund? They're a national organization. They believe you can't do conservation without also doing economic development and understanding the economy of the places that you're doing conservation. So that framework of activation of the natural resources economy is direct language from the Conservation Fund, where if you want to conserve land, how does it impact the people in that region? How does the community engage around that? What does that mean to them? And how are they decision makers around that? So activation, Conservation Fund did a study on what would happen when World Heritage Site inscription occurs for the Okefenokee. And they do expect that visitation will double. So if we're seeing 700,000 visitors today, we'll see at least 1.4 million within the next 5 to 10 years. And that's annually. So when you start to grow visitation like that, and you talk about direct and indirect kind of impacts from economic development, you see, wait a minute, maybe keeping the Okefenokee intact and not mining it for a short-term gain over less than 10 years in a boom or bust extractive cycle. Maybe this, a longer-term rural economic development framework with a mosaic of opportunities, maybe that's better for the communities. It creates health and it builds wealth in those communities. So that's activation of that natural resources economy. Does that make sense? And you can't talk to communities, and this is the, if you're interested in it, it's a young guy, his name is Lance Gloss, he's maybe 27. And he was working for the Conservation Fund. He came into the community to help us out because we really don't have the kind of help that we need in the local community. We're trying to bring people in. And he did this for us, and it has really turned out to be a great calling card for the why behind World Heritage Site. But I could also send it to Alfie so he could share it with you. It's a nice little product. Yeah. So you can't go into a community and ask and tell people you're going to conserve their land, and yet don't ask them what they think and don't tell them how it's going to make a difference for them. We talk about conservation of the natural world, but what does it mean for the people and the communities of the places that we want to conserve and keep wild and keep intact, right? Because biodiversity requires landscape scale conservation to retain biodiversity on our planet. But then what does it mean for the people who are engaging and living in those spaces, and how can that be of value to them? Right? So that's really the space that we're working in Southeast Georgia. And the Okefenokee is a profound ecosystem. This is some of what we've seen. We visited recently, San Antonio. Have you been to the Alamo? The Alamo is a World Heritage Site. I'll also say that not everybody thinks World Heritage is a good thing. Some folks, maybe on the right of politics, believe that we're giving up sovereignty by making the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge a World Heritage Site. That's never happened. It's not part of World Heritage Framework. But because World Heritage Conventions under UNESCO, United Nations Educational Science and Culture Organization. So because we're under that, it's UN. We have, if you're an anti-globalist, you might not like the idea of the Okefenokee becoming a World Heritage Site, right? So one of the arguments we use when we're talking to public groups who might not think we're so great, right, is that do they think that the United States would allow the Alamo? Have you been to the Alamo, man? I mean, they're like, woo, United States. I mean, it is like serious, right? They're not going to let the Alamo become a World Heritage Site if we're giving up sovereignty. That's just nuts, right? So I didn't call them nuts, but so we oftentimes we talk about other sites in the context of the Statue of Liberty is a World Heritage Site. That the United States isn't giving up sovereignty, and the places that had World Heritage Sites in them, they saw investment follow the World Heritage Site. Investment comes in lots of different ways. The state can invest, the feds can invest, but the private sector is normally where you're going to see the investment, because the private sector says there's something here going on and I want to invest. You know what money doesn't like? Money doesn't like risk. So when you're in the Okefenokee and you're asking people for money and they're like, oh, don't you have that mine thing going on? They don't like that because they're like, well, what's going to happen when they mine? Isn't that going to cause problems? And I don't know if I want my money in a place like that, right? So we're trying to de-risk the environment so we can get investment. And World Heritage Site says, oh, this might be a place worthy of investment, right? Maybe not so risky to invest. Some of these are graphs that were done showing visitation to the Okefenokee. You can kind of see the numbers here. And you can see that it already kind of was trending upwards, right? Even without the World Heritage designation. And then you can see this is all the different entrances, because there's 3 entrances. There's the west side, which is Stephen C. Foster State Park, which is the Dark Sky Park. And then there's the north side, which is Waycross, which is Okefenokee Swamp Park. And then there's the National Wildlife Refuge on the east side, which is the headquarters where you go if you want to go out camping. It's where most of the outfitters go out of. And then this is really what we're looking at. This is the kind of growth that we're looking at. You can see this is 2035. Those are pretty big numbers, right? And what are some questions that folks might ask about visitation? So say you're somebody in the room who didn't think World Heritage Site was so great, and you might be. Well, what's a question you might ask? You're going to go from having 700,000 or so visits to millions of visitors? What might be a question?
I ask why I want more tourist activity for something driving due to more development?
Yep, exactly. So that's a great question. That question gets asked a lot. It's like, well, wait a minute, y'all trying to protect the Okefenokee. You want it to stay intact ecologically, and you say it's so important, but what if you have all these people coming? Well, if you go back, and it's a good question, if you go back, if you can remember the slide that you saw the swamp with the water trails, 120 miles of water trails, those water trails only provide access to 2% of the Okefenokee. 2%. You can't get to nearly 98% of the Okefenokee swamp. It's in an impenetrable wilderness. There are no trails. You can't get in. So where visitation is going to be centered is on the already, right, the trails are already done, and also in the communities themselves. So people are going to be coming into the community, doing a lookout, going on a little paddle trip, and then they're going to go to a shop, want to go to a museum, go to a restaurant, find a place to eat, maybe a bar, right? But that is the question that gets asked most of the time, which is a great question and an important question. Oops. Okay, let's see. Let's go back one. That one. All right, sorry. Okay, and we already talked about this, right? Current, what happens with World Heritage, and then these are all the things that you might see: recreation, transportation, business recruitment, retail, entertainment, all things that might result. And then if you remember back to that slide, here's the Okefenokee here. And it sits in those 3 Georgia counties: Charlton County, Ware County, and Clinch County. I feel like I'm ignoring you. And what we see is most people come in through the Charlton County entrance, which is the headquarters of the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. Majority of folks go there. It's the headquarters. It's where you go for your outfitting. There's a visitor center. There's trails to walk. There's trails to paddle. Okay? But most people, I think it's the next slide. But what happens is, if you can see these numbers, most people stay in Ware County. So they don't stay in Charlton County, and they don't stay in, I'll go back one. So they all go here to Charlton County. Some go over to Stephen C. Foster, but they all stay up here, even though Okefenokee Swamp Park has the least amount of visitation, because Ware County has all of the facilities and all the entertainment, all the lodging is in Ware County. So Charlton County and Clinch County, what is their opportunity? Which are very poor counties. Their opportunity is to invest in infrastructure and start getting ready for these visitors. And there's not a lot of people that live there. In total, there's about 35,000 people in the whole area. So not a lot. So if you live there and this is going to happen in your community, you can think about what you can do to capture some of that revenue coming in. So we talk a lot about capturing the value for local benefit. What does it look like? This is a slide that we shared with the local community. We have what's known as, and I'll get there, the Okefenokee Partnership. What this shows you is the economic status, right, in these communities, right? So I talked about the 2 Georgias, and Alfie said that I'm in IGEL, which is the Institute for Georgia Environmental Leadership, and we travel all over the state, learning about conservation and economic development and how they come together. So if you're looking at this map, it kind of shows you your 2 Georgias, right? And you see that there's a lot of rural Georgia that is not thriving, is not prosperous. So as we're working through the opportunities for the Okefenokee, and we're thinking about what to do, we're coming together what's known as the Okefenokee Partnership. And that slide I showed you, which is a slide of opportunity, we get together with the Okefenokee Partnership. It's 80 members from across 3 counties. They are local electeds. They are county commissioners. They are business owners. They are mayors. They're the timber community. And we come together to talk about what can this mean when the Okefenokee Wildlife Refuge becomes World Heritage Site. What does it mean if we get more visitation, and how can we work together towards that end? So have any of you ever worked in community coalitions? Anything around your community to solve problems, to build community, to think about growth or not growing? So some of you have? Would this be something that you cover in your class?
Maybe not directly, but tangentially.
Do you have some thoughts on that?
Oh no, I mean I have worked.
Yeah. It's actually a difficult space to work in. Coalitions are really hard. It's collective impact work. So if you talk about collective impact work, you must talk about how what you do impacts communities. Yeah.
We
So
talk about stakeholder engagement.
Yeah. Same thing. So this is all stakeholder engagement work, and in a collective impact framework. So we're talking about complicated issues having to do, and not everybody agrees, right? You have people in the room who want to mine their land and want to get the greatest value out of it. And you have people in the room who want to conserve it. And you have people in the room who want their business to grow. And you have people in the room that want to leave all their trash in their front yard and never pick it up. And if you tell them they got to pick it up, they're going to tell you they're going to no, not going to do that, right? So lots of different opinions in the room. So a lot of what we do is that collective impact, stakeholder engagement work around the Okefenokee. So this is really the natural resources economy is what we're living in. So I work in the natural resources economy, right? So I'm an executive director of a nonprofit that has about a $3 million budget. Our money comes from earned revenue through visitation, people coming in on boats and going on trips and doing K-12 school groups. And then we have a philanthropy model. So we raise money. Today is Giving Tuesday. So you may be getting some of those emails. So we take donations, and then we also go after pretty large grants. So we're shooting a grant to tell the story of the Civilian Conservation Corps in and around the Okefenokee. And we're stewarding all the dollars for the World Heritage Site as a special project. So we do all of that. So this is the space that I work in, is the natural resources economy. And, you know, it's forest products, downtown revitalization, housing, agriculture. We have a regenerative agriculture living community called an agrihood that just popped up in the Okefenokee. Are you familiar with agrihoods? Pretty interesting stuff. It's about 700 acres. They have about 200 homes going in on a working farm, and it's all regenerative agriculture. Pretty interesting at the entrance of the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. So something new. And this is what you'd have as a classic conservation partnership. So we've kind of bumped that out a little bit. And you talk about conservation as a framework for what you do? Okay. And you think conservation is hard today or easy today? Hard? And why is it hard?
Well, like you said, economics kind of drives a lot of decisions on conservation, and a lot of people are, wanting to get the best for themselves, and a lot of that doesn't happen in the best, a lot of what's going to happen in your best interest for economics is not going to be in the best interest for the environment. So conservation is tough in that sense.
So it is tough in that sense, and that's exactly the conundrum we have, right? So how do we make conservation good economically, right? How can it be both, right? So if you all can solve that problem, you will be billionaires, right? Because that is the problem of your generation, right? Is how can we get the two? It's always been a problem, but even more so today. I think the demands on our natural environment are so extreme that we really have to be thinking about how to conserve it, but how can we make it economically viable for the people who own the land, work on the land, and live adjacent to the land, right? Those are the challenges of today. Regenerative agriculture is one. right? That's shifting our food systems. If you talk about food systems, that's one. And then this idea around, if you have a place that's set aside as federal land, because we have the U.S. Forest Service, we have national parks, we have Bureau of Land Management, we have National Wildlife Refuge System, we have a lot of public lands. How are they stewarded? Which agency oversees them? Do we as citizens access them? Right? These are all topics that are going to be hot topics in this next administration, right? Public lands are going to be a hot topic, and how we choose to use them or not use them. It's going to be very interesting to see. So I said in the beginning, as a nonprofit, I get to raise money and do good work for the community. One thing we're working on astride the World Heritage Project is what we call the Okefenokee Experience. Here's the nice map again, just a little bit more color, right? So you've got Okefenokee Swamp Park up here, which is the headquarters of a nonprofit. And it is, has anybody been to Okefenokee Swamp Park itself? Okay. It looks just like it did in 1950. Okay. So it's a lot of assets that have come to the end of their life, end of their usable life, right? So they're fully depreciated out. It's time for something new. So the state of Georgia has made a commitment of $2.5 million, maybe $5 million, to help us build a new nature center. And we're the only location that has ambassador animals, so you're guaranteed to see a lot of the animals that you would see in the wild in the Okefenokee, but you'll see them in captivity. We work in alignment with Department of Natural Resources. And so there's a lot of need for capital projects and capital investments at the Waycross location. So that's one of the ideas for the Okefenokee experience. And then we talked about the dark sky, and many of you didn't know there's an international dark sky designation here in the Okefenokee. It's actually one of your state parks, Stephen C. Foster State Park. It is the only park in the U.S. that is inside a national wildlife refuge, right? So we got a lot of onlys, first, only one of its kind, a lot of really unique things in the Okefenokee. One of our partners, Superior Pine, as a timber company, has gifted us 20 acres adjacent to one of the state eco lodges to build a dark sky observatory, right? Because people really want to come see the night sky and learn about it. I think Valdosta has a good program for that, which isn't too far. I don't know, UGA might have a program for that. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got an observatory here, I think.
Yeah, well, they kind of come build one down by us too. We got to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And then in Charlton County, which is where the headquarters is for the National Wildlife Refuge, the idea was to have a cultural heritage center. I maybe touched on a little bit that most of the history in the Okefenokee that's told today is just from the last 200 years, predominantly swamper families that are there. A lot of them are from like Scottish descent that are in the region. Crackers, which is not a negative term. And those families that settled in the Okefenokee in the late 1800s are still in the Okefenokee. A lot of those family names that were there in the late 1800s are still there today. There's a lot of the histories that are told, but the first people on the land were the Muskogee Creek. And so, Okmulgee Mounds, we talked, Okmulgee of the National Park. Yeah. It'll become the first national park for the state of Georgia. And it is going to be, what makes it unique, it's going to be shared management. The Muskogee Creek Nation and the National Park Service will share management of the park. First time that's been done in a national park. So that's pretty cool. Muskogee Creek, were driven out of the Okefenokee during the Trail of Tears. And so having the Muskogee Creek back engaged, which they're very supportive of World Heritage Site and telling their story. And then the CCC project we're stewarding for Senator Warnock is to tell the story of one of the only all-Black civilian conservation corps in the state of Georgia that was responsible for digging the 120 miles of water trails that we use today. And that story hasn't been archived or told. We're actually working with UGA Press on the book after we're done with the archival work. Yeah, so kind of cool stuff, right? So that could be kind of a cool idea. We're selling it, so if you know anybody. And then this is the partnership. So all these people you see on here are part of this partnership, right? Like Georgia Power's a big player. Georgia EMCs are involved. A lot of the timber places are involved. What I would say is that I've traveled around the country to meet other practitioners of what we call this activation of the natural resources economy, which is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing. Maybe you knew it was a thing. I didn't. I've been to a bunch of places that do this, like the PA Wilds, and then we were in Western North Carolina before Hurricane Helene, because that was a really great example of people benefiting from keeping their environment clean and using it through the trail system, etc. So we've learned a lot. One of the other things that we do is we work with a lot of the landowners, the Greater Okefenokee Association of Landowners. The entire Okefenokee is ringed by timber. A lot of it is private timber. Some of it is state Dixon Memorial State Forest. And then it's Osceola State Forest for Florida, kind of south of us in Baker County. So it takes a lot of people coming together to make a region like this work and to evolve a region like this. So this is complicated. I started talking about the Okefenokee holistically, talked about a crisis with the mining, that the permit will probably drop between now and Christmas, and about all these opportunities with World Heritage. There is innate conflict in what I'm sharing with you today. If you were in the community, you would find that not everyone agrees on the different directions, and finding a way through this is very, very challenging. So if you were to study something, if you were to study how landscape scale conservation can work in rural America, the Okefenokee is a great place to go because it's happening in real time. And every day I wake up and every day there's a new crisis. Every single day something else happens. Something new happens with the permit, or something happens with World Heritage, or I have to go to DC and meet with somebody, or I have to go to the state capitol and meet with somebody, or there's somebody really pissed off down the street and there's a new sign, or they're coming after us on Facebook, or all kinds of stuff. It's really interesting work, and it's challenging work, and it's the kind of work that we all need to be doing today. So this is kind of what we're up to right now, is the nomination, which will hopefully lead to more entrepreneurship in the region, going through regional branding, fundraising, master planning, and growing the partnership. So the Okefenokee is made up of 3 counties. It doesn't view itself as a region. It's not the Okefenokee region. Who here has been to Jekyll Island? Okay, so Jekyll Island Authority, right? State entity, it's an authority, the state owns it. It kind of defines it as a place, right? The Okefenokee is not like that. It's not like there's the Okefenokee Authority sort of over the Okefenokee. So it's branded in one way and everybody's singing out of the same songbook and all that good stuff. There's a lot of work to do around that, but there's a ton of opportunity. Because if you've never visited and you're from Germany and you come into the Okefenokee, it's not easy to figure it out, right? And so we want to make it easy for people who visit to figure out where to go, where to stay, what to do, know the history, have whatever experience it is that they want. We want to make it easy for them. Well, that's where regional branding comes in. And we work with Explore Georgia and the director of marketing here, Mark Joronsky, for the state of Georgia. They've been huge helps to us. When they go on tour, there's something called Brand USA. Do you know what Brand USA is? It is, it's basically, they work with the Commerce Department for the United States to market. They're the marketing agency for the United States. And they do an international travel conference every year somewhere in the US. And they bring folks in from all over the world to market the US, to get people to buy trips to come to. I did not know this existed, but I've learned all about it. So we want the Okefenokee on their list because when it becomes a World Heritage Site, it is going to be on people's bucket list as a place to come to. So we want to be at all those conferences. So, things that we've learned along the way, engage, partner, diversify. We try to plan, but honestly, we pounce a lot. It's not out there. It's, it's like you eat what you kill. It's not the easiest environment to work, this space. We desperately need young, smart people to work in this space and be creative and come up with novel solutions for some of these really, really daunting challenges. The heritage designation was an example of pouncing. You will see in January, the United States nominating the Okefenokee National Wildlife Park. It'll be national press. And it's a big deal. And I think more people will start to go, that's different, when that happens. Building relationships is critical. If you don't have a good relationship with someone, you can't work through difficult stuff. Fundraising, anyone here have to do any fundraising? Okay. Can you fundraise without relationships? Nope. Relationships are the key to everything. So you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you cannot talk to people, you're not going to get shit done, right? So it's really important, relationships. Reframing problems. And then for us, it's grown into what we call a rural development hub. So that we can actually kind of serve everybody in the unique ways that we need to. So I've kept it, I think I'm right at an hour, a little bit less. So questions?